But what I would say this is you could buy the best companies in the world and the best real estate in the world. It's still going to underperform Bitcoin for a lot of reasons we could talk about. So, if you made a lot of money, Bitcoin 10Xs or 100Xs, and you made a lot of money and you want to be diversified, then you buy scarce desirable properties, but you'll underperform. If you, if you're a Bitcoin maximalist, you just realize the cost of capital is Bitcoin's going up 40% a year.
Hey guys, welcome back to Everyday Finance. In this video, Michael Saylor discusses about Bitcoin and crypto. According to Michael Saylor, being a maximalist for Bitcoin, Michael Saylor say, "I am a Bitcoin maximalist," can signify many things to different people, but from the perspective of an investor. It's since Michael Saylor think of Bitcoin as the ultimate asset. MicroStrategy is a publicly traded business. Our goal is to actually obtain additional Bitcoin. It is not to diversified investments in a portfolio of technology. Firms is not our trading approach. Our approach is pretty basic. We operate a levered long Bitcoin business. Therefore, if you consider us equating ourselves with a location, an ETF for Bitcoin would only possess Bitcoin, but our approach would be unlevered and it would cost you a price. Do we employ strategic leverage? For instance, we borrowed $2.2 billion at a 1.6% rate Curiosity combined, giving us extremely wise long-term leverage, not mark-to-market, after which we use it to purchase Bitcoin. We don't impose any fees, and we create a premium because upon generating cash flows or executing innovative financings, we subsequently transform it into Bitcoin for our stockholders' advantage. And lots of things Michael Saylor discuss, so please watch the video to end and like, share, subscribe our channel, Everyday Finance. Thanks.
I don't think it's very wise to sell Bitcoin. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, and so Bitcoin maximalist means a lot of things to a lot of different people, but certainly what it means from an investor point of view is I view Bitcoin as the apex asset. So MicroStrategy is a company. Our strategy is literally to acquire more Bitcoin. Our strategy is not to trade. Our strategy is not diversified investments in a portfolio of technology companies. Our strategy is very simple. We're a levered long Bitcoin operating company. So if you think about us, comparing us to like a spot Bitcoin ETF, a spot Bitcoin ETF would only own Bitcoin, but it would be unlevered and it would charge you a fee. And our strategy is we use intelligent leverage. For example, we borrowed $2.2 billion at 1.6% interest blended. So we have very intelligent leverage, long-term, not mark-to-market. And then we buy Bitcoin with it. And then we don't charge a fee. And we generate a premium because when we generate cash flows or we do accretive financings, we then convert that into Bitcoin for the benefit of our shareholders. So MicroStrategy, the public company, we have a transparent strategy. And the key with a public company is when you adopt a strategy, you need to be consistent. You need to be transparent. Like, for example, if I created a REIT that invested in premium office space in New York and London, and I raised capital for that, you would want me to invest in premium office space in New York and London. And if I said, oh yeah, the market is, I got the point where I'm going to sell that and buy Kansas City farmland, and now I'm going to trade some digital assets or whatever, you would think, I can't really trust this company because I don't know what they're going to do. And if I don't know what they're going to do, then I don't want to invest my capital with them.
According to Michael Saylor, it's crucial for a public firm to have a strategy that makes sense and is consistent with its objectives. Transparent, hence, the MicroStrategy's approach is to purchase and retain Bitcoin using any implies a creative through a creative. It implies you are aware of when you want your business to go public, when the transaction is completed for investors to believe they are holding more Bitcoin per share, or that they have increased their holdings of Bitcoin rather than lied about their Bitcoin holdings. As you may know, And in relation to, by myself like everyone else, Michael Saylor, a long-time Bitcoin man. Michael Saylor had purchased greater Bitcoin at the time. It was 9,500, correct? In the end, it's the best thing you can do. Michael Saylor discuss about concerning performance. For instance, since MicroStrategy purchased Bitcoin August 10th, 2012, is when we at Ent joined the market. So what's when considering diversification? Consider what transpired to all of these asset types between October 10th and October 31st, respectively, are when we released our quarterly results, outcome of the micro approach. Bitcoin increased by 192%, which equates to yearly compound growth rate exceeding 40%. So let's back to the interview.
So it's very important for a public company to have a strategy, to be understandable, and to be consistent in that strategy and transparent. So MicroStrategy's strategy is acquire and hold Bitcoin. By any means accretive. By accretive, it means, when you get done with the transaction, you want your public company shareholders to feel like they have more Bitcoin per share, or they have accreted their Bitcoin holdings and not diluted their Bitcoin holdings. And with regard to myself, I'm long Bitcoin, man. like everybody else, I'm wishing I had bought more Bitcoin when it was 9,500 a Bitcoin, right? It's, ultimately, it's the best thing you can do. Let's talk about performance, though. For example, since MicroStrategy bought Bitcoin, we entered the market August 10th, 2020. And so what's happened to all these asset classes when you think about diversification? Well, between August 10th and October 31st, when we published our results on our quarterly result with MicroStrategy, then Bitcoin was up 192%. And that works out to a compounded annual growth rate of more than 40%. And the S&P is up 25%. And the NASDAQ's up 17%. Gold lost 1%. Silver lost 18%. Bonds lost 24%. So in terms of asset classes, Bitcoin is outrunning all of the other conventional asset classes. And if you invested in anything other than maybe Magnificent Seven, you're just not keeping up with inflation. But the Magnificent Seven stocks, if you look at them, while Bitcoin was up 192%, Google was up 68%. Microsoft was up 62%. Apple was up 51%. Meta Group was up 15%. Netflix lost 15%. Amazon lost 15%. So big tech doesn't look like such a good diversification versus Bitcoin. And, so how'd MicroStrategy do? Well, MicroStrategy was up 242%. So we actually outperformed Bitcoin. Why? Because we're levered long Bitcoin, right? We used intelligent leverage. We borrowed money to buy more Bitcoin. We didn't just put our assets into Bitcoin. We found a way to borrow $1 billion at 0% interest and buy Bitcoin, right? So if you can do that, I highly recommend you do that. The caveat being, you can't borrow the money at 0% interest if it's a margin loan, because you might get wiped out on Saturday night while you're sleeping. It can't be a mark-to-market. It needs to be like a 7-year, 9-year, 5-year term loan that isn't mark-to-market for that to be intelligent leverage. So you want to diversify, I would say, anybody that said, I like Bitcoin, but I got to be diversified, I'd say, okay, fine. Buy a portfolio of scarce desirable assets that you want to hold for the next 30 years. And it has to pass, the Bernard Arnault test. It has to be something that a person richer than you and more sophisticated than you and more cultured than you and smarter than you will want to buy from you in a decade. And if you come up with that thing, maybe it's a Leonardo da Vinci painting, or maybe it's professional sports team, the Patriots. Maybe it's the middle of London, do you want to buy, the
I would
center of
never
New
buy
York
anything
City.
in London.
I don't know. But what I would say this is you could buy the best companies in the world and the best real estate in the world. It's still going to underperform Bitcoin for a lot of reasons we could talk about. So, you know, if you made a lot of money, you know, Bitcoin 10Xs or 100Xs, and you made a lot of money and you want to be diversified, then you buy scarce desirable properties, but you'll underperform. If you, you know, if you're a Bitcoin maximalist, you just realize the cost of capital is, Bitcoin's going up 40% a year. The cost of capital is 40%. That means anything that you invest in has to yield that, which is kind of the risk-free cost of capital for a Bitcoin maximalist, plus the risk premium. So if you came and you pitched me an idea today, Michael, I've got this company that's really smart and it's going to outperform, you know, Bitcoin, I'd say, well, then you have to do 40% plus another 10 or 20%. So if you can promise me 60% for the next decade each year, right? Like what's my forecast? My forecast is Bitcoin goes up 40%, then 35, then 30, then 25, then 20. And like 10 to 20 years out, it's clipping along at 20. And then over the course of 100 years, it's growing 14% a year. And against that, the S&P index will probably grow 7% a year. The money supply will grow 7% a year. So if you diversify in the S&P index, you're just going to maintain your wealth, track the money supply if you get lucky.
According to Michael Saylor, if you were to invest in the greatest businesses on the planet, the world's greatest real estate would still perform worse than Bitcoin for a variety of reasons that we could discuss. Large sum of money, you know, Bitcoin 10 or 100 times, and you made a sizable profit. You purchase rare, desired properties because you want to be diversified. Yet you'll perform worse if you are a Bitcoin maximalist, and you've now realized the expense of capital is seeing a 40% annual increase in Bitcoin. Since 40% is the cost of capital, this implies everything you invest in needs to produce a return that is essentially risk-free of capital for a maximalist Bitcoin user plus the risk premium. So if you came to me and made a pitch for Notion today, Michael Saylor would say that my company, which is incredibly intelligent, will perform better than Bitcoin. Then you must work an additional 10 or 20% on top of the 40%. So if you can guarantee me 60% for the following 10 years, exactly. For example, my prediction is that Bitcoin will increase by 40% at that point, 30, 20, and so on. After 10 or 20 years, it's snipping away at 20%, and after a century, it grows at a rate of 14% annually. If you learned something from this video, then please like this video and subscribe our channel Everyday Finance, and we will meet in next video. Thanks.